Hello everybody, my name is Armando. Today I'm doing my refutation speech on Aaron's presentation. His topic was legalization of marijuana in California. His major claim was Assembly Bill 64, legalization of recreational marijuana will harm the cannabis industry in multiple ways. His first secondary claim, economic systems in the Emerald Triangle will fail. By that he stated, Emerald Triangle is one of the best environments to grow cannabis. Second, cannabis is a major part of the economy in Northern California. He then goes on to state that cannabis is used as a trade, used to trade almost as a form of currency. It also helps fund anything from schools and fire departments. And there is a cannabis culture in California that is not known to the mass consciousness and will be lost if Prop 64 is left as is. Upon doing my research, the Emerald Triangle is one of the major grow counties in North America. In fact, according to Joshua Measle from Humboldt State University, one of the studies shows that 1 in every $4 circulating in Humboldt County is actually tied into the cannabis industry. Another claim show that the area retail rates for pot are some of the least expensive in the nation. And if you were to leave anywhere outside of Humboldt County, prices will increase. You're paying more. This is not causing economic system to fail in Emerald Triangle. So for his first point, I didn't see how that was relevant because illegal growing is what's damaging the economic system. New environmental threats associated with legal marijuana cultivation in the region causes water diversion, soil erosion, diesel spills, as well as the excessive use of fertilizers are some of the byproducts of unregulated cannabis cultivation, conspiring to destroy area waterways and vulnerable fish habitats, according to Bureau 18, 2015. I also found that as using marijuana for currency and trading purposes, I was unable to find any information for that. So, I mean, I'm sure individual residents in that area probably do use that as a trading or as a bargaining tool. But, for example, I wouldn't be able to walk into a Walmart with a bag of marijuana and use that in order to buy essentials that I needed for myself or my family. I also did not find any information as to marijuana would fund schools or fire departments. I did, however, find that Cannabis Cash has helped build local environmental organizations. Today, these groups are working with land management agencies selectively to fight bad growers who damage rivers and forests with irresponsible cultivation processes, so pretty much illegal growing. His secondary claim is discuss the introduction of GMOs into cannabis and how it would harm the cannabis industry. He first starts by mentioning Monsanto. In short, it's a company which owns majority of the corn and soybean market in the U.S. That is distributed more than half around the world. Basically a monopoly. To this, I did some research. I found that Monsanto was actually bought out by Bayer for $66 billion. So this is probably old information that he used. They still use the name Monsanto, but as to the U.S., it owns about 40% of the U.S., approximately 151.4 million acres, which are planted in Monsanto crops. His second point that he made was there are mass grow operations that use GMOs that cause health problems. For example, human studies show how genetically modified foods can leave material behind inside of us. I didn't find this relevant to his major topic, since we're pretty much talking about the legalization of marijuana and how it is affecting the industry of marijuana. I didn't see how this tied in to the major topic. And according to the Waking Times, it has been rumored for years that Monsanto planned to take into the cannabis industry with genetic engineering, but they have always denied having intentions to do so. I've come across multiple sources citing sites and stating that Monsanto Bayers have come together to create the first strand of marijuana using GMOs. but nothing has been confirmed. Follow statement by the World News Daily. Although Monsanto's testing on cannabis is only at the experimental stage, no plans have yet been released by the agricultural business firm as to what purposes or patented strains, what they would be used for. It was said that they would be used to loosen up the laws around medical marijuana, to kind of help legalize marijuana. So again, I don't see how that would, again, harm the industry. Also, another example that he used was that, GMs in corn was found inside of the blood of a pregnant woman and unborn fetuses. I didn't see how even using that as an example would tie into the industry, cannabis industry. Say if they were to use CBDs or any experimental drugs like that, I don't see how any pregnant woman or would use that as a sign of any pain or nausea. And his third point was that the Senate bill evidently has caused more than harm than good. His first point was Prop 215, legalization of medical marijuana, has passed November 1996. Prop 215 has been fine since the day it was passed. If you really wanted to buy weed at a clinic, you should just buy a doctor's recommendation. And his third point was that it isn't so hard to obtain a medical recommendation. You just need $40 to $60 and a California ID, and then you'll be smoking weed by the end of the day. This is true, but the law has passed, and you can still be 18 with a medical recommendation and buy medical marijuana. So I don't see how the law passing would affect the industry. And now that it is legal, any adult 21 or over are able to rightfully buy marijuana and use it for their own recreational use. I don't see this in any way damaging or harming the marijuana industry. Like if you're buying in bulk and selling drugs illegally, yes, I would see how this would affect you. But other than that, I don't see how that would harm the industry. In conclusion, the legalization will not harm the cannabis industry, rather help it grow. Previously, it was said that card holders would be able to grow 6 cannabis plants in their own home. Now that the law has actually passed, any adult 21 or over can actually grow plants, 6 plants in their home. There will, however, be a demand for outsourced growers for medical clinics. So if legally licensed, I do not see why you cannot grow, like say in Humboldt County or any other county, and outsource to these clinics. The main point is pretty much doing it under law, so I don't see how this would affect the marijuana industry. Thank you.
Okay, the topic and the secondary claims are laid out reasonably well. On the first point, you get a little caught up in the Emerald Triangle and discussing what the economic impact is there. Both you and the advocate seem to agree that it is part of what's going on up there. The question is, how is it going to change? And I think that you did suggest that there are some reasons to believe that it's not particularly important, that it's legal in changing those sorts of things. It's a little unclear as to, like you say, there's no evidence that marijuana money is being used to fund schools or fire departments or any of those sorts of things. The advocate didn't cite any information. I think that might have been one of those places where you could show, for instance, that a tax revenue that's generated from Prop 215 would probably create some money to do those sorts of things, whereas now if it does any of that sort of stuff, it's infrequent, voluntary, and certainly under the table because it doesn't seem to be documented anyplace. You spent a lot of time on that issue, and I'm not sure that it's as important as some of the other points that are being presented. I did like the idea that you said, well, it's nice that they have a barter system up there, but how significant and important is that, is how much business is connected to that. And I like the kind of dismissal that you have there. Look, you can't take a bag of pot into Walmart and buy stuff with it. It doesn't work that way. The second part on the GMOs, the fact that Monsanto was bought by somebody, I don't know why that matters. The question is whether or not genetically modified organisms are going to be part of the marijuana system. And you do suggest that that there is experimentation going on, but there's no plans for them to get into this particular business. I thought you had a good piece of information on that. There's no explanation as to why they both can't coexist. That, I think, would be something that you could make as a simple argument on this particular point. And then I think you do suggest, for instance, that if people want to continue to use the medical marijuana that they're already using without legalization, that they can continue to do so even after legalization. I think that's a reasonable press to be making on that particular point. That's kind of both on the end of that second point and on the third point. So it's an okay answer on those arguments. In the long run, the real question is what's going to be better. And I do like on that first point, for instance, that you make an argument that says, this business up there is doing damage to the environment because it's unregulated. They use irrigation systems that are problematic. They use pesticides that potentially can contaminate things, and they're not run like a regular business, so they're not subjected to the same sorts of environmental rules that are going on. And then you kind of have this other group that is working to address that. It seems like that other group existed prior to the passage of 215, and that 215 in the long run would probably facilitate that group being effective in trying to hold growers' feet to the fire when it comes to environmental laws and regulations. And I think you can make that argument a little bit more clearly. You have a tendency to read a lot, look down. You need to talk to us a little bit more. All right, thank you. Oh, and I didn't mention it, 8 minutes and 14 seconds, so it's more than 2 minutes overtime. That's like an extra third of a speech.